Hey everyone, I wanted to go over Astarion's personal quest in Act 2 because if you're like me, you might just be wanting to work on it first and get closer to him, but probably had no idea where to go or how to progress forward. Then, if you go and look it up, it's just a bunch of spoilers everywhere, so it can be very difficult trying to figure it all out for the first time. Thus, I decided to put this video together as an aid for all of you Astarion Mancers out there. And so, as to not ruin it for anyone who doesn't want spoilers, I'm going to put a little spoiler-free blip at the beginning here that gives you a vague idea of what to do without giving it all away. And for the rest of you who want more of a hand-holding experience, I've got a guide for the whole thing. And of course, in my regular fashion, I'm going to go over my thoughts on everything that really stood out to me too. So for the spoiler-free version, using the minimal locations, you're going to get a request from Astarion in camp. You will find the person he's looking for at Last Light Inn, which you'll arrive at very quickly if you follow the main quest line. Then you'll find this person again outside of the Thorm Mausoleum, which is located here. Past that, it's pretty self-explanatory, so stop watching now if you don't want anything ruined. With that out of the way, we're going to get into the meat of it, because this whole quest is completely new to me, and you know I have to talk about it. Now, the exact way this quest appears for you might be slightly different. In my case, I almost always play a Tiefling, and that specific race gives you some really interesting insight into the scars on Astarion's back. You'll first notice it after the romance scene with him, where you'll get a specific Tiefling option asking why it's written in Infernal. Astarion first brushes it off, but finding out about the scars will trigger another scene where Astarion is trying to figure out what the scars say by touching his back. As a Tiefling, you can offer to help him out and read what it says. It talks about oaths and the fires below, but the words are fragments, like a piece of a larger text. And after further questions, Astarion doesn't have any idea what the heck it could be. But he knows it's valuable to Cazador, and it makes more sense now why Cazador wants him back so badly. As a non-Tiefling, I'm pretty sure you can still pass an Arcana check and find out that it's written in Infernal, but you won't know what it says. Now, all of this leads up to Astarion's personal quest in Act 2. I'm actually curious if other people have managed to trigger this scene without romancing Astarion, or without finding out about his scars. I'd actually love to know more about that in the comments below if any of you have, your own path to share that varies from this one. So, once you've progressed into the Shadow-Cursed lands in Act 2, you should see that Astarion wants to talk to you in camp. He's been thinking about what Cazador carved into his back and has decided that he'd like to find Raphael to help him figure out what it says. It's probably not the best idea, especially after seeing how Mmogurl treats Will, but it's an idea nonetheless. You can ask if Cazador carved runes into any of the other spawns too, which he says yes, they all got the same treatment. When you say, sure, makes sense, he will actually give you approval for being pragmatic and going along with the idea. But of course, nobody knows when or where Raphael will show up, so it's just a matter of finding him. I also have to say, I laughed at this one option that says, hey, I could take another look if you want. And he just calls you out for wanting him to take his shirt off.
Any excuse to get my shirt off, I see.
It's a tiny little quip, but it cracked me up. I wasn't even thinking that when I selected that option, but it's funny how sometimes the text you pick and how the character responds, it isn't always what you expect it to be. Now, in my case, I had no idea where to look for Raphael, or Raphael. I know everybody always tells me it's Raphael, but I like to say Raphael. I was thinking, is he going to show up at camp? Am I going to just run into him somewhere? How the heck do I know where to go? But thankfully, if you just follow the main quest line, you'll end up in a safe area called Last Light Inn. You'll find Raphael inside the inn playing the D&D equivalent of chess with Mole. After a little back and forth with the devil, he'll turn to Astarion. It's kind of funny how Astarion's demeanor is so different than what we're used to by this point. He seems flustered, almost embarrassed. He then straightens up his posture and explains that he wants to know what the contract on his back says. And while Raphael is thinking of what he wants to get out of this deal, you can bug him to hurry up or even accuse him of not knowing, which is kind of funny. He says you're being too impatient, though, and that he'll have to think about it and get back to Astarion. This causes the most indignant reaction from Astarion, who is just like, you'll get back to me? When?
You'll get back to me? This is important, devil. When?
It's almost like when you're trying to call customer support and you get one of those bad automated systems that refuses to let you speak to an operator, and before you know it, you're yelling at the machine, "Operator! I want to talk to an operator!" I digress. It just made me laugh how flabbergasted Raphael made him. I mean, he knew the Cambion was going to be a pain in the ass. They almost always are. Now, figuring out where the heck we were going to run into Raphael again was the worst. I had no idea where he was, and then I randomly found him outside of Thorm Mausoleum. I'll show it to you on the map here. It's north of the House of Healing, though. It's funny to note how defensive Astarion is here when we come across Raphael, though. He's got his arms crossed and everything with a look on his face that's just like waiting for something offensive to be said, doesn't he? I mean, it could be because he knows he's about to hear some really bad poetry, though, so I can't really blame him. When Raphael finally stops blathering, you have the option to ask him how long he's been standing around practicing that little recital, and he actually answers, "Until it was perfect."
Until it was perfect.
This guy has no shame. He continues to prattle on, talking in riddles, and eventually I was just like, dude, give it to me straight. And I even passed a persuasion check to make him get to the point. And now we're finally getting somewhere. He says there's another infernal inside, but this one is an Orthon, which is pretty big, and he wants you to kill it for him. You can pass an insight check here too, and Raphael will admit that him and the creature go way back, but he doesn't really say too much more about it. So the deal is to kill this Orthon in exchange for translating the scars on Astarion's back, and I agreed with Astarion here that it was rather fair considering the source. In camp, you can talk to Astarion about the new quest from Raphael and ask him, are you really going to trust that devil to keep his word if we kill this Orthon? Since it's short, I'll just play it for you.
I'd trust a devil over a vampire any day. I think he likes us. Perhaps if we kill this Orthon extra bloody, he'll invite us for tea and brandy back in his house.
Astarion's sarcasm aside, I don't think I'd like to go back for tea and brandy at Raphael's house. I might have to hear more poetry. Ugh. Now you must head within the mausoleum and find Raphael's target. I'm not going to give you guys a complete guide for this area because it's huge, but to make things simple, you need to solve the first puzzle to gain access into the Gauntlet of Shar, and once inside you want to head north past another puzzle and then make your way to the east. You'll know you're on the right track when you see the Displacer Beast running ahead of you. Here's a little shot of the map to show you the location though. The Orthon's name is Mmogurl, and this is quite the difficult fight if you don't try to use your persuasive abilities. He has a ton of minions, plus a Displacer Beast, plus himself. So as a suggestion, try to get him to kill as many of his allies as possible. Use a character with high charisma so you can pass the rolls more easily, but honestly, even just getting him to kill his minions makes the fight much easier. Also, make sure if you want to talk to him that you go in through the bottom and don't come in through the back coming up on top, because if you come up from behind, he will automatically get into a fight with you and there won't be any talking. So in order to get him to kill off all his allies, you basically have to get him to recite his contract, which is a song. Pass the insight check, then persuade him that the lyrics are a trick. You need a 16 to pass, which isn't horrible. Mmogurl will then order his Miragons to kill each other, and then you can even persuade him that his Displacer Beast has heard the song too, and that takes a 21 to pass, but it's definitely doable. Now all that's left is to persuade Mmogurl to kill himself so that he'll complete the contract and be reborn in Avernus, a free Orthon. It takes a 21 to pass, and I didn't have any inspiration left, so I just killed him. Still, the fight is way easier with all the ads and the Displacer Beast running amok. I'll also mention that Astarion will usually disapprove if you don't outright kill Yerger.
What are you doing? The devil told us to kill this thing, so let's stop chatting and kill it.
But it's not a big deal, especially considering what a pain in the butt this fight is. But, you know, it's up to you, of course. With your part of the contract fulfilled and Yerger dead, go to long rest and Raphael will visit you right away before you even get to your camp. Raphael starts off talking about the Orthon you dispatched and how he's going to re-educate him, which makes you feel a little sleazy and bad, but, you know, we were doing it for Astarion, and it could have been much worse in all reality. And finally, the devil lets us in on what the heck the pact is. Let me just play it for you guys.
As you know already, your precious skin is home to one part of the contract between the archdevil Mephistopheles and your former master, Cazador. In full, the contract states that Cazador will be granted knowledge of an infernal ritual so vile it has never been performed. The rite of profane ascension. It promises to be a marvelous ceremony, very elaborate, incredibly ancient, and entirely diabolical. If he completes the rite, he will become a new kind of being, the Vampire Ascendant. All the strengths of his vampiric form will be amplified, and alongside them he will enjoy the luxuries of the living. The arousals and appetites of man will return to him, and unlike Astarion, he will have no need of a parasite to protect him from the sun. But the ritual has its price, as all worthwhile things do. Lord Cazador will need to sacrifice a number of souls, including all of his vampiric spawn, if he is to ascend. Imagine how he felt then, when one of those precious spawns simply disappeared into thin air. The only missing ingredient is Astarion. You are the final piece he requires to complete the ritual. Your scars bind you to it. Your soul will set off a very wave of death, bringing Cazador his twisted life.
So damn. It sounds a lot like Cazador is trying to make an alchemist stone. I mean, the sacrificing of all those spawns' lives? It's insane. I know in all of the time I played through Early Access, I never conceived that Cazador would do something so diabolical. It's kind of funny, wouldn't you think as a vampire lord that his spawns would mean something to him? Maybe feel a bit like children? But perhaps that's too human for him. Because Cazador just seems to look at his spawns as, well, pawns to be used to whatever advantage he deems worth the time and effort. But it also makes perfect sense, because if Cazador didn't actually care about Astarion, or any of his spawns for that matter, then why the heck would he go to such lengths to get Astarion back? Well, unless, that is, he actually needed him for this rite of profane ascension, to become a vampire ascendant. As Raphael explained, he'll get more powerful and also be able to go out in the sun without a tadpole. He'll basically be a living vampire, but he has to sacrifice all of his vampire spawns, and with Astarion gone, well, he can't do it. After Raphael leaves, Astarion turns to look at you, and all he can say is, It's like, what? The choices here were so great, but you know I had to say this one first. Cazador is a piece of shit. Yep. Signed and underlined. Oh, that felt so good. There were more good possibilities for the next choice, but ultimately I was curious what he would say about becoming a living vampire himself. I mean, Astarion is always looking to become more powerful, and I kind of took that as I would like to become the vampire ascendant instead. But at the very least, he's realized that we need to take the fight to Cazador, and that he needs Tav's help to do so. Of course I'm going to help him out, like, it wasn't even a question. I've been waiting for 3 years to hunt down this incomprehensible jerk, as I'm sure many of you have been too. Afterwards, you can approach Astarion in camp and ask about Cazador's ritual.
The thing that will decide my fate forevermore. Yes, it's been on my mind. Why?
He comes off a little over-the-top snotty at the beginning here, like, bruh, don't bite my head off. I'm just checking in to see how you're doing. Trying to ignore his attitude, I ask if he thinks we can stop the ritual, but I don't know if I like what he had to say about it.
I hadn't really decided on the specifics. Obviously, we could stop the ritual, or not. What? I've obviously thought about it. If I was the one who completed the ritual, I'd have such power. And I could walk in the sun without fear I'd turn into a mind flare.
I've got to say, this does bring up some moral dilemma for me. Like, here I am sympathizing with Astarion's plight, all of the awful things Cazador put him through, but yet he'd then turn around and do it to his fellow spawns. Poor souls who have gone through all of the same crap he has. It's like a light switch of morality. Like, how is that okay for you to do, baby? You sound a little nuts. Maybe I'm not embracing my chaotic side enough in this game. Oh my god. Like getting attacked by a moth. Maybe I'm not embracing my chaotic oh my gosh, enough. Oh. Maybe I'm not embracing my chaotic side enough in this game, but to me, I think I'd rather see him, I don't know, heal, get better, and I don't know if that's in the cards at this point or not, but I feel like he might not be very happy with this choice in the long run. Like, I need to be a little more of a conscience to him than an enabler. So, I reminded him of that by saying, what about the souls you need to sacrifice? Astarion just glosses over the topic like it doesn't even matter. They lured and killed thousands, he says. But what about him? He mentioned sleeping with 10,000 people over the years. How many of them were victims? Is he not just as bad as his siblings? It kind of bothers me that he's so blinded by the prospect of power that he can't see that. But in all honesty, I think this power-hungry nature of his is born from fear. Fear that he'll be a slave, fear that he'll be forced to do the unthinkable again. If he can be more powerful, then nobody can force him to do anything he doesn't want to again. At least that's kind of how I see his logic at this point. It could also be that he's a little bit evil, too, from all of his bad experiences, but like I said, it would be nice to compliment him, balance him more than what he's been used to. Right after that, you can ask, what do you intend to do about Cazador's ritual? And this is what he has to say about it.
Before anything else, I need to know where it's happening. To the public, Cazador is an ordinary noble. A little reclusive, perhaps, but just another of the great and the good of Baldur's Gate. He has a grand palace on the hills of the gate, where he hosts the city's high society. I don't know if he performed the ritual there. It feels too public. He'd risk exposure. I know. Subtle, isn't it? I hope so. Because I'm not striking another deal with Raphael. Knows what he'd demand this time. But if the citizens of Baldur's Gate don't know anything, my brothers and sisters might. Cazador is a master of secrets, but the other spawn must have seen something.
I thought it was funny that you can make a comment on how the giant Gothic building was actually home to vampires this whole time. Like, that's just pretty obvious. I guess not obvious enough, though. But for now, the plan is to head to Baldur's Gate and start asking around about where Cazador might be planning to host this ritual. Astarion mentions his spawn siblings again and how they might know something, and that's about all you can do with this questline until you proceed to Act 3. There are some more amazing scenes in Act 2, though, and I'll get to them as soon as I can edit them together. I know many of you have probably gotten past this whole quest line and beyond, but many are still slowly working their way through the game. I'm curious what you all think of this quest as it stands at this point in the story, though. To me, it seems like Astarion is really all over the place in terms of how he acts throughout all of these encounters. Like, he's a veritable emotional roller coaster. It's much different than the calm, collected man we saw in the first act, who always knew exactly what to say in the smoothest voice possible. But at the same time, he seems a bit more real, more candid. I'm so excited to share the next parts of this romance with you all as I progress through the game. I'm going to make a playlist called Astarion's Romance, and I'll be placing all of these videos in order so you can watch them all the way through if you'd like and catch up on any you might have missed. I'm also going to put a video together that is just the scenes from this quest line without the commentary. Sometimes I want to play the entire scene for you guys, but it's just going to be too stinking long, so, you know, I have to break it up. But in case people want to just watch the whole thing uninterrupted, I'm going to make the other viewing option available. Can I also say, guys, this game is so breathtakingly amazing. I'm in love with it, and not just Astarion, but the entire game. If you enjoyed the video, consider subscribing, as there is going to be a huge slew of new BG3 content coming out over the next few months, possibly years. I mean, there's a lot. Thanks to my Patreons for the support, and if you'd like to help support the channel too and get access to the private Discord and a whole other chunk of content on Patreon, then head over and make a pledge. I'll see you guys later.